3 weeks ago, a team of Spec Ops was deployed to Afghanistan to investigate an old Russian complex. The team was comprised of 3 members. 2 made it out. 1 died later of unknown causes. I was one of them. It started out just as any other sortie. Get in, get out, keep it simple. What we didn't expect was what we were after. Apparently Recon had discovered an old complex, covered by sand, apparently undisturbed since its inception. The door was bolted shut. Wooden boards were nailed to the door. That didn't stop us from getting in. Marco, the demo specialist, hooked a charge to the door. An electronically detonated explosive blew through the door like tissue paper, and we made our way in. The door was heavy, about 4 inches thick, but the bolt was not sturdy enough to hold. As we made our way in, something struck Henry, the combat medic in our squad, by surprise. "Hey, you guys smell that?" "I don't smell anything," Michael said, keeping focus on the open room. "Well, it smells like something rotting. Keep an eye out." "Will do," I said, keeping a mental note about the smell. As we moved through the complex, a slight banging noise was heard in the ventilation, and some of the air shafts were busted open, strangely, from the inside of the shafts. I caught this and alerted Marco and Henry. Henry deduced that it could not have been done with explosives, as no shrapnel or blown-out wall panels were present. Both he and I found this odd. As we were investigating the shaft, we heard Henry shout for us, followed by gunfire. 12 shots were fired, and we found Henry huddled in the corner of the room, shaking. What was in that room defied all logic. Bodies. There were bodies everywhere. Some were mutilated beyond all recognition. Others were stripped down to the bones. One corpse was split in half, with his upper body hanging from the ceiling. His lower body was thrown onto the floor. The bodies looked to be all soldiers, 12 in total. The doors to the other rooms were covered in thick, greenish gunk, forming a sealant along the door, as proven by the corpse piled along the door, each one ripped to shreds. There was something else in that room, however. A long, sand-colored worm-like creature lies still, with the multiple holes peppering its roughly 7-foot-long body. Green, oily blood covered the floor around it, with Henry splattered with the blood. This was shocking. Henry was an experienced Spec Ops, serving some of the most harrowing, dangerous missions in the world. How could this break him? As Marco was trying to get Henry to his feet, one of those things burst from the ceiling ventilation unit, grabbing Henry by the upper body, dragging him upwards. Henry flailed around, his screams muffled by the creature grabbing his body, now bringing him to the waiting maw of the worm. Marco and I opened fire, but the worm would not budge, swiftly thrashing upwards, bringing Henry with it. We stood in horror as Henry screamed, followed by 6 shots from his pistol, and then an audible crunch. Marco and I ran as fast as we could, stumbling and tripping as we bolted towards the facility door. More of those things could be heard scuttling towards us, their shrill shriek echoing through the walls of the facility. As they scrambled towards us, we slammed the facility door shut, the worms' bodies slamming into the heavy metal. "This is Alpha. Henry is KIA. Something took him into the vents. We can't fight them. This place needs to be destroyed. Requesting immediate evac." Marco had panic and fear in his voice, shouting into the radio as the worms smashed into the door. We were attempting to get farther away when the door broke open. The blockage of planks and bolt locks were the only things keeping them in. They burrowed into the sand and vanished. We were terrified. Seeing those things move with such speed through the loose sand, Marco opened fire on the mounds of sand that were now rushing towards us. I joined in and we killed one. But the beasts were unstoppable, taking multiple assault rifle shots and still going. As we scrambled backwards, one of those things grabbed Marco by the legs, attempting to drag him into the sand. Marco dumped his remaining bullets into the worm. Before its body was riddled with holes, it sunk its razor-sharp teeth into Marco's legs. He screamed in agony. As the wound started festering immediately, he scrambled to his feet, as did I, and we bolted farther into the desert. The helicopter arrived about 6 minutes later. The soldiers on board dropped out, but Marco protested heavily, saying that they would be taken into the sand. He was losing blood fast, and I protested with him. Those things swam through the sand like it was water, and they were ferocious in their hunt. We wasted no time getting out of there, lifting off as the worms leapt towards the helicopter. When we arrived at base, we were alerted that the area had been bombed. When a Spec Ops team like ours needed air support or reinforcements, we were put on high priority list of recovery, as our missions were vital to security. When the mission handler told us that a search team was to be sent out, I urged them not to, as those things would leave no trace of the team behind. I was told only today that Marco had died of his injuries, and that the infection from the bite was extreme, causing the skin to erode, and large green lumps to form around the bite area. The only reason that I'm saying this is because I think that there are more of them out there. The Russians built that facility to study these things, and when they broke free, they sealed it off. More reports have been coming in about disappearances in the Afghan mountains and deserts, with little or no trace of the victims, only half-eaten corpses or shredded clothing. I'm praying now, praying that whatever these things are, they do not reach these cities of Afghanistan. They will cause untold havoc, deaths in the thousands, and they will not stop until nothing is left. I'm shipping back home to the States today, and I'm hoping that the worms do not reach another team like mine, alone searching for documents or files. Something about my transport is quite unnerving. It has been packed with samples from the site. How they got them is still a mystery, but they are on this plane. One crate is full of bodies, and I'm pretty sure that one is full of samples from the door covered in gunk. But one crate keeps shifting, and I swear I can hear a dim scraping of sand against the steel box. I woke up in what seemed to be a doctor's medical room, only not. It seemed that the room was made by someone with either a low knowledge of what a doctor's office looks like, or someone with a thin grasp on sanity. The walls were covered in drawings that looked like a child drew them. They were simple depictions of animals, like lions, elephants, and monkeys. The only windows were next to the door leading in and out of the room, but they were in basics opaque and only a small bit of light poking through it. The last thing that I remember was walking down the street and seeing a white van come next to me. Next thing I knew, there was a sharp pain in my left arm and I passed out. It was only then that I realized that I was tied down to a crude surgical table, and I started to feel it on my back. I must have been there for a while because it was warm instead of cold. At least that's what I thought until I felt the wetness on my back. I didn't feel any pain anywhere in my body except for in my arm. That was throbbingly sore, most likely from what I assumed to be the needle that I was injected with. I was wondering what the wetness was until I smelled the iron. It was blood. At the time, everything I was taking in at once made me have the worst headache that I've ever had. I tried to move my legs, but they were still numb, and I couldn't even feel them if I tried. It was then the realization hit me, and I couldn't help but scream my lungs out. I was missing 2 of my fingers. The cuts looked clean, like someone with experience in surgery had cut them off. They were clean and smooth, and they seemed to have been cauterized with medical equipment. And then I heard it. All the other screams. I wasn't the only person here. I was far from it, actually. I could hear the screams of dozens of people throughout the whole building. There were what seemed to be all genders and ages from what I could tell from the screams. Men, women, even the screams of children. But they all stopped suddenly, except for the room next to my room. The screams sounded like they were coming from a woman. I figured the other people here knew better than me, so I shut my mouth. I saw a shadow pass by my window to the next room, as a figure moved through my vision. The walls were thin. I could hear what sounded like a sewing machine going, and then the scream of the room next to mine were muffled. They were still audible, but they were much quieter. A figure outside came to my door and opened it, and walked inside to my view. It was a woman. She was wearing a dirty, bloody, and tattered lab coat. It looked like she had gotten it from the trash only a few minutes earlier. She also wore a mask. It was a simple white face mask, but it seemed highly customized. Over where the mouth was supposed to be, there is a medical mask, and she wore medical protective glasses over the eye slits. They were tainted and dyed red by blood, as was the rest of the mask and like her clothing. She spoke with a slightly muffled voice, but that is to be expected when wearing a mask. Her voice was soft and it didn't match anything else about her. She sounded like she was a pediatrician speaking with a child patient. In her calm and soft voice, she asked, "Can you feel your legs yet?" I answered in a slightly scared voice, "I don't know." "Well, let's test it real quick," she replied. After finishing her sentence, she pulled out a small scalpel and stabbed it into my leg and twisted it hard a couple of times. I felt the jolt of pain finally giving feeling in my legs. She noticed the wince that I gave at the stab, and she marked something down on a now visible clipboard. "That's lucky. You're gonna be able to do your surgery soon, but you know how doctors' offices are. Soon is gonna be around 5 hours. She chuckled at her own joke. I giggled to see if I could get on her good side. She walked out of the room and came back a few minutes with a woman on a gurney. From what I saw, she was the woman from the room next to mine, from where the doctor, for lack of a better word, went after she left my room. "Place is just filled up. Lucky for you, after I do the surgery, there will be an open spot," she said. And by the way she turned her head, I think she was smiling under the mask. That was when I saw what looked like a name tag with the name Doc on it. The woman fought and managed to sit herself up for a few moments. From that, I noticed that her lips were sewn together. That must have been what these sewing machine noises were. Doc, as I will call her now, strapped the woman down, showing an impressive amount of strength for a person of her small size. She quickly removed her mask to wipe away some sweat from her brow, and suddenly, a phone in her back pocket went off. She answered it in a slightly annoyed tone. "What is it?" She placed the call on speakerphone, and a voice from the other side said, "Yeah, this is Ace. Just to let you know, if you've captured a woman with blonde hair, a thin body, and 2 different eye colors, then you should either release her or kill her right now." What he said perfectly matched the woman that Doc had on the table. Doc spoke back. "Oh, well, she saw my face, so I'm gonna have to do the latter." The voice on the other side said in reply, "Well, just hide the body really well." The doc said back, "I'll just send her body over to the hound. I'm sure his dogs would love the snack." The voice said back, "Okay, well, see you at the next meeting." The phone hung up after that. "It's your lucky day, lass," the doc said while cutting the strings from the woman's lips. "You're gonna get a little bit extra." She took out a bag from her back and opened it up. In there were surgical tools. They were all very dirty and seemed to have never been washed. She put a blade to the woman's bare chest and started to cut. Doc seemed to have needed to put some force into the dull blade to cut her open. While putting her hand up to a non-existent person, the doc said, "Clips," seeming to be in a delusion, pretending that she was handed clips, even though she handed them to herself. She clipped these skin flaps to the side of the table and continued to work. The first thing the doc did was break the woman's ribs with a hammer, all the while the woman was awake and could feel everything. Doc removed 2 complete halves of her ribcage and stapled them to the sides of the woman's head to make some sort of disgusting crown. After that, Doc shoved her hands into the woman's abdomen, and with what seemed as with great force, pulled 2 things apart. When Doc took her hands out, I can see that she had pulled the lower end of the woman's digestive system out of her body, and at this point, it seemed as if the woman had shredded her vocal cords to the point where she couldn't even make a sound. At this point, the woman passed out. Doc seemingly enjoys the pain the woman was feeling. She injected something into the woman's neck. The injection seemed to wake her up instantly. After that, the doc continued her surgery and proceeded to tie off the end of the woman's intestines to the tip of a pole that she took out of her bag. The doc took the pole and shoved it down the woman's throat, deeper and deeper until the final breath of the woman sneaked out of her mouth. It was then that she finally passed away. "Well, now that that's done, I can bring you to your room," the doc said, going back to her calm voice. She grabbed my gurney and pushed me into a different room. The room seemed a little cleaner than the last, less blood and grime. I figured I only had an hour or so until I was given my own surgery, so I had to get out quickly. I watched as the silhouette of the doc went into the procedure room. I thought of ways to escape. I hadn't taken a moment to pause and think yet, but that's when I realized the smell. God, the smell. It smelled like 1,000 bodies burning all at once. I almost threw up. I quickly went into action. Using the hand that was missing 2 fingers, I pulled my hand out of the restraint. I dislocated my wrist in the process, so I had to pop it back in. Gosh, did it hurt, but I had to stay silent. After I popped it back in, I untied myself and I got off the gurney. I almost fell. Due to my adrenaline, I completely forgot about the open wound in my leg. And as the chemicals wore off, I started to feel it more and more. I started about the room. It wasn't very big, and I knew that the screams of other patients would keep my cover. As for protection, I grabbed a pipe that was laying on the ground. I knew that I would need to bust through the locked door, so I waited for these surgical patient screams to pick up. As soon as they did, I broke through the lock with the pipe. When I got out of the room, I could take the building in full. It looked like an abandoned hospital, an ER to be exact. The door to the surgical room opened up and Doc walked out. I hid in a cabinet so she wouldn't see me. As she walked through the makeshift lobby, I watched as she would say things to non-existent people and laughing at random things. If I didn't think so before, now I knew how disturbed she was. She dumped the body of her last patient and walked into a different room and pulled out a different victim and went back into the surgery room. I saw a hallway, and in a mad dash to leave, I ran down it. Past the corner, there were a set of double doors that I went through. Through these doors, I saw dozens, no, hundreds of bodies in all different stages of decay. I saw that some of the bodies had been there for years, only bones being left. The smell here was the worst. I now knew what it really looked like, and now that I've been here. I ran out of that room as fast as I could muster, and I ended up back at the lobby. I saw a different hallway. This one just looked different. The other hallway looked as old as the rest of the building, most likely because it was built with it. But this hallway seemed newer. Not clean by any meaning of the word, but still better than the other parts. I moved faster down that hall, but not as fast as I did the other one. And then I saw a bit of light going through a door past a turn. I ran as fast as I could now, until I hit it. In the doorway, there was a wire that now dug itself deep into my flesh. I could feel it moving around. My adrenaline was spent. and I didn't expect it, so I screamed very loudly. After I pulled it out of my leg, I heard a door slam open, no doubt Doc not wanting an escapee. And so I ran and ran and ran. I left the building, only looking back to its general location. I came to a road very quickly, and I found a car which brought me to the nearest town. In only a few hours, the police had a small army, and with my help, found the hospital in the woods. It was empty of life. It seemed that the doc had released a gas that took care of everyone in the building after she left. This left no survivors, and I was the only recovered person from this particular dock and area. At the station, an officer walked up to me and handed me a letter stating, "Miss Jennifer, we found a note that this person seemed to have left for you." As I read the note, my blood began to crawl and I felt sick. The note read, "To my dearest patient, it's a great shame that you escaped. The surgery for you was going to be extra fun. What a shame. I wish you a good rest of your life. Signed, Dr. Death."